Tonight we drift back in time to a lonely corner of the world where whispers of history are carried on the sea wind. Let your eyes grow heavy as the mists of southwestern Scotland begin to settle. A place of cliffs and tides, of stories long buried in the caves that edge the coastline. This was once a land of shepherds, of quiet footpaths and humble inns, where travelers moved carefully along winding roads and where darkness came early in the winter months. It is here, among the lapping shores and grassy hills, that our story unfolds. One not of kings or castles, but of shadows and silence and something unsettling. But don't worry, we will go slowly and softly. Nothing will jump out at you here. We'll walk gently with the cool air at our backs and history tucked safely in our hands. So breathe deeply, set down your thoughts, and allow yourself to drift into the folds of the past. Because this is the story of a family, a cave, and a quiet horror that lived in the dark for 25 years. Before there was a clan. Before there were whispers of the cave, there was just a man. His name was Alexander Bean, but the people called him Sawney. Not a noble name, not a gentle one, but it suited him. He was born somewhere in East Lothian, the son of poor farm folk who worked rough land with rougher hands. Even as a boy he was different, quiet, sullen, never quite settled. As he grew, he did not care for plow or pasture, nor for the ways of men. He drifted, lingered in taverns, watched from behind hedgerows, until he met a woman, a strange woman. Her name was Agnes. People said she was a witch, said she whispered to bones and talked to the sea. But Sawney, he liked her. She did not ask him to be better. She only asked that he follow her, and he did. Together, they left behind the world, left behind work and law and land. They walked west, toward the cliffs, toward the cave. They found it at low tide, a wound in the cliffs carved by the sea. The cave was long and deep. Some say it stretched more than 200 yards into the stone, but no one knows for sure. No one wanted to know. The air inside was wet and still. The floor was uneven, slick with salt and thyme. In the far reaches, no light ever came. It was perfect for the life they would build, a life without sun, without people, without the rules of the world. They made their home in that darkness, built beds of old seaweed, collected rainwater from the rocks. They did not ask for charity. They did not beg. They had each other, and they had hunger. And so they waited for the world to come to them. At first, it was only sometimes. A traveler lost in the fog. A merchant camped too close to the shore. A pilgrim walking alone. They watched from the brambles, waited until the sounds of the road faded. Then they moved, silent as owls, quick as foxes. What happened next was never seen, only felt later, when someone came looking and found nothing at all. No body, no blood, just an empty cart, a cold fire, and the silence of the trees. It was enough for a time. The world was large, and the countryside quiet. no one saw the pattern, not yet. And deep in the cave, Sawney and Agnes ate and slept and whispered stories to their children in the dark. Yes, there were children now. Over the years, the darkness became their world. Agnes bore child after child, and those children grew, not under sunlight or starlight, but under damp stone. Their lullabies were the sea crashing outside. Their toys were sticks and bones. Their stories were of hunger and of the road above. They never knew the sky, never saw a church steeple, never touched a book or spoke to a stranger. They did not know shame or guilt or law, only family. By the time the first children became parents themselves, the clan had grown. New voices echoed off the walls. New little feet padded over wet stone. They built a life in the shadows. Meals were shared in silence, and flesh was preserved in salt or hung to dry above the fires. To them it was not monstrous, it was ordinary. They were taught to hunt, as others are taught to read. And all the while Scotland slept, unaware of the secret growing beneath its soil. In time, they grew bold. What had begun as desperate theft became craft. The clan studied the rhythms of the countryside, learned which paths were busiest, which inns were too remote. They watched for weeks, waited for the right moment. Then they struck. Never loud, never messy, like wolves. They hunted as a pack, one to distract, two to circle, one to strike. They used sharpened sticks, small axes, heavy stones. Quick, efficient. Nothing was left behind. The bodies were carried back, piece by piece, down into the waiting mouth of the cave. Clothes were boiled for fibers. Bones were crushed. Teeth were scattered. The roads became feared. Travelers vanished. But the land was wide and the people poor. It was easy to believe the worst: highwaymen, wild beasts, storms. No one thought of a family in the cave. Despite the darkness, there was rhythm. Each day had its tasks, its murmured routines. One might render fat for candles, another boil salt from the sea. Children learned to knot rope, to gut rabbits, to sew. Older ones scavenged from wrecks along the shore, gathering driftwood, rusted tools, even shoes. They had no clocks, no calendars, only tides and hunger. Food was always the focus. Preserving it, cooking it, stretching it. In lean months, they boiled bones for days, making stews so thin you could see the bottom of the pot. But in times of plenty, they feasted. The fires crackled louder then. The singing began. A strange, tuneless sort of song, half whisper, half lullaby. No words, just sound, ancient and soft. This was their world. Strange, yes, but ordered. Hidden, quiet, and still. No one knew. Eventually the stories began. In the corners of lowland inns, in the flickering light of fires, travelers spoke in whispers. Stories of carts that vanished, of whole wedding parties that never arrived, of roads where the birds didn't sing. Some said it was bandits, others witches or spirits. A few wondered about the cliffs, about the caves below. But who would believe it, that an entire family lived underground, feeding on the flesh of those who passed? It was easier to laugh, to drink, to forget. And yet, more people disappeared, more roads grew quiet, until finally, someone survived. They say it happened near a stream where a young couple camped on their way to Edinburgh. It was quiet until the shadows moved. The man was gone before he could shout, but the bride, she ran. Through brambles and bog, torn lace trailing like a ghost behind her. Her lungs burned, her bare feet bled, but she did not stop. By dawn she reached a village, and this time someone believed her. She spoke of wild men, of children with knives, of eyes that gleamed in the dark. The villagers gathered, gripped by fear, and for the first time they dared to follow her story. What they found would change Scotland forever. The woman's tale traveled fast, from village to magistrate to the ear of King James I himself. He did not laugh. He did not doubt. He had heard too many stories, too many lost parties, too many missing merchants. And now, finally, someone had lived to show the way. The king summoned his best men, riders, trackers, dogs. He would lead them himself. This was not a matter for courts, not for scribes or scrolls. It was older than law, stranger than war. What lived in that cave had no name in the law books. It had to end. And so, under gray skies and low clouds, the king's party rode west toward the cliffs and the cave that waited like an open mouth in the stone. The tide was low. The cave was open. The dogs were first to cry out, not in warning, but in terror. What the soldiers found was not a battle, not even a struggle. There were no warriors inside, only a tangle of limbs and blankets, of smoke and rot, of people blinking in firelight they did not understand. Their eyes unready for the sun, their skin pale as wax. They did not fight. Some wept, some hissed. A few ran deeper into the cave, only to be dragged back screaming, not from pain, but from the light. They were surrounded. Sawney and Agnes, now gray and thin, sat quietly near the fire, watching their strange kingdom fall around them. They said nothing. They had lived as ghosts for too long. There was no trial, no parchment, no court. King James had seen enough. What lived in that cave was not made for mercy. Not after 25 years. Not after generations of darkness. The clan was taken to the city, and there, in a field outside the walls, it ended. Some accounts say the men were executed first, slowly, so the women would watch. Others say the king allowed it to be quick, out of pity. Agnes, they say, was the last to die, still whispering songs only she remembered. Songs from before, from when she was young. before the cave, before the dark. No one ever recorded her final words. Afterward, no one spoke of the cave. It was left alone. The tide came and went. The wind howled through it like breath through a hollow reed, but no footsteps ever echoed inside it again. The road grew safer. The stories faded. In time, many refused to believe it had ever happened. Surely, they said, no one could live like that, not for so long, not unseen, not in silence. But the royal records still sit in Edinburgh's quiet halls, and in the stone cliffs of Ballantrae the cave remains, empty now, just rock and salt and time. And now, dear listener, we leave that cave behind. Let the sea close over it. Let the wind erase the names. What matters now is this moment, this warmth, this breath. You've walked through a quiet chapter of history, a strange one, yes, but real. And now it's time to rest. Close your eyes. Let your thoughts soften like mist over the moors. The past has been told, the present is still, and sleep is just ahead. Good night.